Hello everybody, this is SWTOR, and today we're going to be going over the Combat Sentinel. Now, remember to note that today is on the basics and the better to help players get a better understanding of their class if they're completely new to the role or the spec or just in the game in general. So I will be going over the things to note from the discipline path here, but I'm not going to go over everything that's in it. So please read all of it so it will help you understand what each ability that's benefited from the discipline path will have against the target or on you and all this kind of stuff, and it might be able to help you out find your own rotation. Same thing with the utility points. I have a basic one set up. Please go through all of the different utility points and find something that will benefit your playstyle more. I will also be going over obviously the rotation, a couple of the AoEs that you have, and I will be going over some player tips as well. So to get started, I will be going over the utility points here, starting with Skillful, and which I have set up with Jedi Enforcer, which will increase the damage dealt by your rebuke by 15%, and increases its duration by 4 seconds. I have Debilitation, which will Blade Barrage will immobilize the target for 3 seconds. And I have increases Stoic, which increases your damage reduction by 2%. And you build 2 centering when attacked. This centering build effect cannot occur more than once every 1.5 seconds. Adamant is a good substitution, where you generate force focus when you are the one being CC'd. And it will also reduce the cooldown by your Resolute by 30 seconds. The reason I paused earlier when I was on Jedi Enforcer is because I believe Resolute was actually initially on there. So I think a couple things got changed here, which is very well happened. The other good one to switch it out with is Trailblazer, where your Cyclone Slash will deal 25% more damage. So unless you find the rebuke damage increase is helpful, which usually it is, I do recommend switching it out with Adamant instead. Masterful, I do have it on Ardor, where Transcendence no longer requires or consumes centering, but will go on cooldown for 30 seconds when activated. This is very useful because the main version that you will want to use is actually Zen and not Transcendence, because Transcendence will increase your movement speed for a few seconds, your group members' speed for by 50%, and increases the melee and range defense by 10% for 10 seconds. This is actually useful when you have Ardor, so that way you're not using up your centering to use it, but instead you're using the centering on Zen, which in this changes depending on your spec, and which in this case it provides 30 alacrity for 6 charges, and each attack you use consumes 1 charge. An additional stack of precision is granted if precision is used while Zen is active. So, in my opinion, Ardor is very helpful, so you could use both. and you just use Transcendence as if it was a defensive ability. I also have Pulse, which reduces cooldown of Force Stasis by 15 seconds. That's a personal preference, just because I use it for PvP purposes or as a stun. But it is also useful because it deals a small amount of damage and builds 3 focus over the duration, and can be used while moving. A good switch up is to use, where was it? You could always use defensive roll, so that way you could have a reduced damage taken by area effects by 30% and increases your internal and elemental damage reduction by 3%. It's a good substitution if you don't want Pulse or Ardor or whatever. Heroic, I have Expunging Camo, which removes all cleansable effects when you activate Force Camo. And I also have Enduring, which increases the duration of Guarded by the Force by 2 seconds and reduces its cooldown by 30 seconds. I didn't find something else that would be very useful on this side, but you can read and use what you personally like out of it. I personally just prefer those two. Under Legendary, I have Zealous Ward, which activating Saber Ward grants immunity to stun, sleep, lift, and incapacitating effects for 6 seconds. And getting attacked while Saber Ward is active heals you for 3% of your maximum health. And the healing effect cannot occur more than once a second. Zealous Judgment is a good substitution, where Dispatch refunds 2 focus when used on a target affected by your Pacify, and can be used on any target affected by your Pacify regardless of remaining health. Additionally, activating Pacify grants Zealous Judgment, increasing your force and tech resistance by 75% for 6 seconds. So very good substitution if you don't like using Zealous Ward. The other one is Inspired Focus that you can substitute for, which generates 12 focus when you activate Inspiration. And you heal for 1% of your maximum health whenever you activate an ability that consumes focus. So those are the 2 substitutions along with that as well. So things to note: your Lance will sunder your target for 45 seconds, which decreases your target's armor rating by 20%. Whenever your Ataru form damage affects your target, your next Bladestorm or Clashing Blast will have its damage increased by 5%, and it will have a 100% chance to crit. Also, from Ataru form damage, it will also finish your cooldown on Dispatch, and it will proc it to use regardless of the target's health percentage, with a 20-second cooldown. The thing about Dispatch is it is normally used when your target's health is at or below 30%. So when it's procced, it's very useful because it doesn't matter what health percentage your opponent has. It could be max health at 100%, it could be at 80% health. You'll be able to use it. So on my rotation bar here, I have it set up for Force Leap, Zealous Strike, Lance, Blade Rush, Precision, and then Blade Barrage. I have Twin Saber Throw back here, but you could have it down somewhere if you prefer having it down there so you can generate. Actually, I don't think this one does. Never mind. You can have it anywhere down you want. I have Clashing Blast and Dispatch up here. The reason being is because I will use these only when they're procced. Which, when they're procced, they'll have a glow around them. So to represent, first we use Force Leap, Soul Strike, Followed by Lance, Blade Rush. Use those. Precision and Blade Barrage. I double checked. Doesn't look like your Twin Saber Throw will provide any focus. So you'll have to use either Strike or Zealous Strike to gain focus. Anyway, that's the basic of the Combat Sentinel here. So again, for the rotation, Force Leap, followed by Zealous Strike, Lance, Blade Rush, Precision, and Blade Barrage. You could add Twin Saber Throw in the rotation if you want. Only use Clashing Blast as well as Dispatch when they're procced. So that way you have maximum damage output from those. Pacify will decrease the target's melee and ranged accuracy by 90% for 6 seconds. This does not affect operation bosses. So for player tips, I will be going over some legacy info. Legacy can be activated by pressing the Y button. And under character perks, for advancement, as you can see, I have class mission and exploration experience both maxed out. This is how I personally leveled up, and what I recommend for those who are new to playing the game, so they can at least enjoy the storyline. You can also get Flashpoint experience if you end up running a lot of Flashpoints. Warzone experience if you run a lot of Warzones. And a couple others. For Companion, I personally recommend Legacy of Altruism to be maxed out, as well as your Legacy of Promptness. Legacy of Promptness would reduce the time it takes to give your companions gifts by a total of 60% among all 3 of them, which will take the 3-second cast time down to about 1.5, 1.6 per gift. So that ended up, so let's say if you had a maximum stack of companion gifts, that's a lot of time saved. Legacy of Altruism will increase the amount of influence you get with your companion from the gifts you share by a total of 30%. So combined, that's actually quite a bit. From Travel, I recommend getting Priority Transport Personal Starship for about 50,000 credits. So that way you can go from a random point on the planet in the middle of nowhere and be able to port straight to your personal starship. It's going to be helpful with the class storyline. I also recommend getting side planets if you don't know where to find them on the galactic map. So that way you're able to just port straight there and be able to do the heroic missions on there, the flashpoints, if any, are there that are there. It's all helpful. It's going to be helpful for that. Under convenience, I recommend the two you see on my screen are the two I personally recommend completely for the leveling up process at the very least, which is going to be Advanced Field Repair Droid, which in Flashpoint, questing in the middle of nowhere and all that, even operations is going to be helpful because your group members and yourself will be able to use the repair droid to sell, and if your inventory is full, and you'll be able to repair your armor as well. And then the field respec will be allow you to obviously respec in the middle of nowhere. This is useful because let's say you don't like the spec you're in, and you're in the middle of nowhere, you'll be able to respec and try out a different spec. Or let's say you're a Juggernaut for the Sith Warrior. If you happen to be playing a DPS Juggernaut and you happen to have the gear on you for tanking, and you have the field respec, and you happen to be in the middle of a flashpoint and your tank decides to drop group, well, as a Juggernaut yourself, you can switch your armor out for tank and field respec into the tank role, and be able to keep your group moving in the flashpoint. Same thing if you're a sorcerer and your healer drops group, and you happen to be DPS, you could go from that DPS back to the healer role and be able to heal your group and keep going as well. Under global unlocks and other, this one, once you unlock it on one character, you unlock it for all the characters in your legacy for the server. I recommend at least one character maxing out the light achievement, because this will allow you to get an extra defensive ability to where you and your companion, because your companion has to be out in order to use it, both you and your companion will have a 50% damage reduction for 15 seconds. It's very useful if you're in a very rough spot. For ship unlocks, I would get the repair droid, operation training dummy, as well as the warzone training dummy. You do not absolutely have to get these, but I personally recommend it if you like being on your ship in private to train, see where you're at for healing, tanking, or your damage output before you want to go into the operation or even the war zone. For convenience, get the Legacy Fleet Pass, Legacy Travel, and the Personal Transport Personal Starship, all of them maxed out. Because what will happen is you'll be able to port on the planet through quick travel, your personal starship, and your fleet. You'll be able to port without any cooldown. 0 cooldowns equals win. Essentially, if you're bored, nothing else to do, you can just port around all day with no worries. I also recommend getting improved mounting. This allows you to mount while moving. You do not have to stop for that 2 seconds. And personally, it's rather addicting because once you go to an alternate account that does not have it, you kind of wish you had it. Then lastly, I recommend getting tactical markers, because as a group leader or operation leader, you could use the tactical markers and mark where each role is going to be at, and before the boss fight, and pray to God that the boss fight will go a lot smoother. Anyway, that is my recommendations This is the Combat Sentinel, and I wish you guys the best of luck.